So we are continuing with discussing the internal dialogue, and this is part 4. So the next title of the next section is Changing Our Internal Associations. So internal dialogue is very powerful because we are with ourselves all of the time. We are with other people sometimes, but we are with our own mind every moment of the day. Imagine associating with a person who at every moment calls you a failure, a moron, an imbecile, or a problem. This person sends you constant messages that your very existence causes them pain. If someone talks to us in this way occasionally, we might later find ways to avoid them, but we must associate with our minds all of the time. The most unfortunate aspect is that we must associate with our minds even at times when we stop monitoring its thoughts. The internal conversation is so important because we will become that which we constantly tell ourselves. The sweet part of the devotional process is that we read the scriptures, hear the lectures, and hear the holy name. Then we will gradually connect our internal dialogue more and more with the spiritual platform or with transcendence. After a while, if those connections remain like our healthy diet, they will transform our subtle body as well as our physical body due to that level of communication. When we do not have a spiritual dialogue, this inner dialogue, we may hear, read, interact, engage in some type of puja or worship for many decades, but we will still hear the same old tape in our minds, this negative inner dialogue. We will not completely benefit if this internal meditation completely differs from the external devotional activities. Now in the material world, even though some people have achieved many of their goals, they still also have this past recording or past tapes that play in their mind again and again, these negative messages. And in the case that we mentioned in our previous broadcast of the girl who wrote a letter, and she has come to a devotional community, she read the scriptures, she heard many lectures, and has even researched the problem on her own from the psychological point of view. And all of these positive activities have only helped her to a certain extent. So until her internal dialogue changes, she will not make a significant transition. She can repeatedly hear from the devotees that we are not this body, that Krishna is our ultimate protector, and that he is ready to receive us. But if our mind continues to tell us the same old negative messages, we will only partially accept all these spiritual truths. So the fact is that we have brought so much with us from the past, and our karma may have unfolded as a rough past. However, by the Lord's mercy, the difficult past led the difficult past somehow led us to embrace spiritual life because we were not happy. Many people come to spiritual life out of distress, then some of them want wealth and some want knowledge. So this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Chatur vidha bhajante mam jana sukriti norjuna arto jigyasur artarti jnani cha bharatarshava. O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. This is Bhagavad Gita 7:16. We can basically summarize all of these points by saying that we will begin to change seriously when we change what we constantly tell ourselves. In other words, it's this internal dialogue. We associate with ourselves for the maximum amount of time, which means that we must change the nature of that association, so that internal association. Especially during our vulnerable times, which happen when we lack good association or feel fearful, depressed, and anxious, the mind will become even stronger. The influence of our own mind. For example, people who have been sexually abused may tend to see it as their fault. By accepting the blame and suffering in their own life as a result, they turn to alcohol or drugs and fall into an addiction. However, by trying to erase the past through intoxication, they only compound the problem even more. And now, in order to change, the person must deal with both the addiction and the trauma simultaneously. Although they hear that drugs will destroy the body and enslave them, they continue with the habit because they cannot sufficiently change their consciousness or their internal dialogue. Transcendentalists, we have great understanding about the powers and dangers of the mind. We also understand the influence of previous lives, which produces our current life. We want to eliminate those issues from our past and present lives from the past and present lives, so that we can free ourselves of those particular shackles. Then we can address the issue. The next section is called Find the Source. So we would like to share one last example that deals with trauma. Now, many of these examples come from women because women often communicate more than men. As men, we have even worse position because we hold these pains and are afraid to talk about them. We hold them inside. This final example deals with a woman who is 100 pounds overweight and diets continuously. In some cases, she goes through successful diets, but then after that she simply returns to her previous eating habits after a while. Sometimes this scenario might result from her internal dialogue, and in other cases she might feel needy and then substitute the food for a lack of healthy relationships. If we look deeper, this woman might have undergone a trauma in her childhood, such as sexual abuse. When she begins to lose weight as an adult, she begins to attract men, and this makes her feel sexually vulnerable. These situations stimulate her consciousness and remind her of the abusive experiences from her past, which she never addressed sufficiently. Then she begins to overeat again because she wants to protect herself with her body image, and not place herself in the same abusive situation again. A person can go on one diet after another, without ever recognizing the real issue. The internal dialogue will simply remain the same, and due to fear, they put themselves in a situation that hinders their ability to transcend a particular block by this inability to identify the block. These examples can help us reflect on the various blocks in our consciousness which return again and again and continue to haunt us. Consequently, we will simply remain a part of the deteriorating situation in the world in which people constantly divorce and children do not receive proper protection, even in spiritual communities. We will even end up transmitting our own problems to our children because we have not dealt with them sufficiently. Therefore, we impose our own weaknesses on them, and unfortunately, in most cases, they will not be able to deal with them either because of their own developing internal dialogues. As devotees, we do not have to become psychiatrists, psychologists, or sociologists. However, we do need to better understand the power of the mind. The mind can be our greatest friend or our greatest enemy. And these discussions should help us realize that our mind is basically our enemy until we can understand its dealings. Once we recognize how it functions, we can turn it into our best friend. So this is the end of the chapter, and now there is questions and answers which we read together. We will read tomorrow. And then when we finish with the questions and answer, we have finished this chapter from the book Spiritual Warrior 5. And then we will discuss quotes from various books by Bhaktitirtha Swami. So thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions, you can write me, and especially about the internal dialogue. And here Maharaj has highlighted and explained from different angles of vision and with different examples. He has described the issues around internal dialogue. So thank you, and Hare Krishna.